Hey Natasha, what's up? Welcome to the Just Breathe podcast. How you doing?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me, Georgie. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm really excited for this conversation. Really excited to hear a lot about your productivity routines. I know that's a big thing for you, as well as your passion about sleep, because of course you're a dentist. But I know that you're a big advocate for how important and vital sleep is to our overall health. So I'd love to dive into your journey with that, if that's okay, and just what brought you to find out about the importance of sleep, the importance of having a routine, all these different things that came into your life that sort of influenced you so much.
Absolutely. So my journey into sleep started about 3 years ago. I was practicing as a general dentist, and I still do, part-time at least. And then what had happened is I had a patient who, in all words, was very miserable,
Right.
just hated life.
Oh.
And we would see her every few weeks for procedures and every 6 months for exams and cleanings. And then one visit, she came in and she was a changed person, I tell you not. Um,
Really?
and I'd asked her, what's different? And just having a conversation with her because she was so pleasant, we were excited to see the transformation.
Yeah.
And she said that she was diagnosed with sleep apnea, and she
Mm.
had started a CPAP, and her life changed dramatically. Her mood changed. She wasn't taking as many blood pressure medications.
Mhm.
Depression and anxiety had lessened. Her outlook on life just seemed so much more positive. She
Yeah.
was more affable. And things like that you don't understand and you take for granted until you see how drastically it changes a person's life.
100%. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what kickstarted my journey into sleep. I I had heard about sleep apnea, but not didn't know much about it. So I
Yeah.
started looking into it, and then just learning about the signs and symptoms for adults and children. I realized that my daughter actually suffered with apnea as well. And she was
Wow.
snoring, and she was only 3. So she was snoring, and I would sit there while she
Wow.
would sleep, just counting how many seconds she would stop breathing. Um, and so then I had taken her to the pediatric ENT, and we had her tonsils and adenoids removed, and
Yeah.
it does help obviously with the snoring, but as when we mouth breathe, which she was doing for quite some time, she does have some dental developmental issues,
Mm.
a narrow palate, and the way her bite is a little off as well. So now we're starting to look into palatal expansion so that she can have a better bite and consequently breathe better, because when you expand the palate, you are expanding the nasal cavity as well, and nasal breathing is key,
Right. And all,
for
all
our
those
well-being.
problems at such a young age have arisen just from mouth breathing.
Yes. So in our development, when we mouth breathe, we kind of open, Pandora's box, and it does come in conjunction with children who, suck their thumb or use pacifiers or prolonged bottle use. So those
Right.
are aiding in it, but it is. Long term, it is due to mouth breathing. And if we don't correct mouth breathing at a younger age, the consequences kind of compound over time.
Wow. Wow. And so so one of your patients and your own daughter, that's a pretty hefty incentive to start looking more into this, right? And isn't it interesting with sleep apnea? I find it with a couple clients I work with myself in terms of breathing, that when you say, "How do you sleep?" there's often a very long silence and they go, what do you mean? Well, I guess. And I was like, no. Like, how do you sleep with your mouth open? And a lot of people can't answer the question, which is interesting because I wonder how many people and children as well are blissfully unaware that they have sleep apnea and are snoring, because snoring is not a natural thing, right? Actually, a lot of people think, yeah, it's just snoring. Actually, as humans, it's not that natural to snore, right?
No, it's not natural at all. One thing, if you have, severe cold and you're congested, that's
Sure.
very temporary
Right.
snoring. But if you are snoring chronically, long term, that's not natural. And it's actually one of the signs and symptoms that we look for in patients who may have sleep disordered breathing. And when I examine a patient, we look in their mouth clinically, but I also ask them externally, are you tired? Do you snore? Are you restless in your sleep? Have you ever been told that you stop breathing and maybe gag in your sleep, trying to get air? So these are things that we want to look for when we're talking about sleep disordered breathing. So I don't consider snoring a normal human function.
Mm-hmm.
If you are snoring, that's a sign of something greater.
Right. Something's going wrong. Do you think a lot of sleep disorders actually are covered up and misdiagnosed as other things?
Absolutely. We are seeing, if just looking at children, we are seeing that a lot of children are diagnosed with ADHD, ADD, and in fact, it's a sleep disorder, and it's a high statistic. You wouldn't even imagine that children are hyper. If you have a child, they're hyper, they can't sit for a second. But we also have to look deeper than that. We can't just say, oh, a child is sleepy or excessively hyper because, of X, Y, and Z. We can't just say, oh, they need medication, they need Ritalin, they need some sort of aid to help them to calm down. We need to look deeper and dive deeper because these medications are debilitating. Their long-term use leads to so many other problems.
Right.
And if we can fix someone's sleep, you're not only fixing their attention deficit or their inability to function because they're tired, you're looking long-term for diabetes, hypertension, Alzheimer's, dementia, depression, anxiety. So it's so profound, the consequences of poor sleep on our mental and physical well-being, that we just can't deny and ignore it at a young age.
Right.
So to me, that's where it all starts, is diving deeper into reasons. So for example, I have adult patients that come in with multiple blood pressure medications, 2 or 3 of them.
Wow.
They have diabetes. And then I ask them, the same question: do you snore? Do you feel you breathe with your mouth? Are you restless in your sleep? And, they answer yes to all of them. I said, has your physician ever looked into your sleep? No. So oftentimes the physician hasn't looked at the sleep apnea portion. And I always recommend for the patient to either go back and speak with their physician, or I give them a referral to a sleep physician that I work with, just to get further evaluation. And even if they don't qualify as somebody who has obstructive sleep apnea, sometimes just understanding the hygiene of sleep, understanding the implications of quality of sleep can change them. So I have patients who come in that are extremely tired. They might snore here and there, but they don't qualify as an obstructive sleep apnea patient. Sometimes they do qualify as an upper airway resistance patient. So that's something that's a little bit different than obstructive sleep apnea. It's similar in the sense that you have trouble getting good quality sleep, but in upper airway resistance, you're not having the apneas, meaning you're not stopping your breath.
Okay.
You're not. So you're having micro arousals throughout the night that your body keeps reminding you to breathe and to get sufficient air. So that makes you really tired when you wake up.
Right.
So that's another situation which I look at in my practice. And we do treat patients with oral appliances and sleep hygiene techniques with upper airway resistance so that we can get them the best sleep.
Yeah. And do you find then, seeing as you see all these patients come in, they're on all these medications and they might not even be aware that they have obstructive sleep apnea. Do you think that's at some point at this sort of pharmaceutical or the medical's point where we're sort of whacking a Band-Aid on really, really quickly without, like you said, getting to the root of the cause? Because bad sleep quality or bad breathing even could actually be a cause of many, many ailments, right? And by fixing the root, the sleep, you, like your patient you were initially talking about, that woman, you can find that suddenly this burst of life comes through from addressing that root cause.
Absolutely. I think that in today's world, just medicine has become so infiltrated by outside sources, and
right.
The ability to care for patients has been affected by insurance companies and corporations and whatnot, that it becomes harder to really sit down and dive deep into patient care. So, our reaction is to prescribe a medication to help what would help with the effects that we see, but maybe haven't found that deeper cause. And I think that deeper cause tends to shed light when we see that the medications aren't working. And that's when we go down deeper. But the way I see it is we can, in the right setting, really dive deeper before we even prescribe the medications.
Yeah.
So that we can avoid the polypharmacy or having a patient become reliant on a medication. And in a lot of cases with hypertension, especially, I know that patients with mild hypertension can, do alterations in diet, or even patients with diabetes or pre-diabetics can do alterations in diet and exercise. And with sleep, it's very similar. We don't always jump to, oh, you need an appliance or you need a CPAP. We try, with sleep hygiene or exercise. Weight loss is a big contributor to sleep apnea. So we try all these alternative techniques, but they don't always work. And that's the same thing in traditional medicine, getting down to the root cause and treating the sleep apnea. It may help to a certain degree, but it may not solve everything. So being on medications may still be necessary, but the level of the prescription of the greater the prescription, it may not be necessary.
Right.
So that's the only thing when it comes to over-prescribing or prescribing, is sometimes we don't have the ability to get to the root cause. And in an ideal world, yes, it would be fantastic to limit the amount of medications that we prescribe. Unfortunately, I think given in the current situation that most physicians find themselves in, it becomes very difficult.
Yeah. And I know as well, you're a big advocate for the sort of interconnectedness of everything and how one thing always affects the other. And I think that is something that's often missed, in that there's an assumption there that we go to the dentist for our teeth, and our teeth are our teeth and they affect nothing else. And that's our mouth, and that, the high blood pressure, that pill is for that, but we forget about the adverse effect on the rest of our body. I'd be interested to hear your opinion on that with sleep, in terms of how stress affects sleep, or how poor sleep affects stress, and how then that infiltrates relationships, diet, even sexual desire, anything, that can really affect very basic human functions.
Sure, absolutely. So what I find is patients who do suffer with poor sleep, whether they do have a sleep disordered breathing or not, just insomnia or restless sleep, just don't get enough sleep, it does cause more mood disorders, more mood imbalances, anxiety, depression. And in turn, the anxiety we feel throughout the day can actually cause worse sleep the next night.
It's a big circle, right?
It's a vicious cycle. So what we see is patients who work at a stressful job or have, relationship issues, their stress levels throughout the day increase.
Yeah.
And when they increase, our cortisol levels increase.
Right.
Cortisol is a stress hormone in our body. And if it is at a high level when you try to go to sleep, you won't be able to sleep, and not well. Having restorative sleep is very important for our mental well-being and our physical well-being. Physically, I've spoken about, health implications like diabetes and depression and hypertension, but also sleep, improper sleep can also lead to impotence. So that's something, for a man to take aware of. And we don't think about it as it can, affect more than just our external health, but even our internal health. Stress and anxiety over time lead to poor sleep, and poor sleep can also affect our, youthfulness,
Yeah.
wrinkles, hair loss. So it's a lot that kind of rides on getting good restorative sleep. And another thing we don't think about is our performance at work, or our ability to recover from, if you're an athlete or a person who runs marathons. Sleep is very important for certain hormones.
Yeah.
Hormones that control our hunger, that control our growth of muscles, such as growth hormone. We don't look at how sleep affects our performance at work the next day, our productivity, our relationships, in the sense of mood stability. I mean, if you
Yeah.
get 3 or 4 hours of sleep, you are more likely than not going to be cranky the next day, especially if it happens for multiple days in a row. So you're going to have, poor relationships with maybe your spouse, your kids, even at work. If you're, a client facing a professional, you can, have those type of disturbances that really affect your profession, your career, your livelihood. So sleep, it affects so much more than just, being well rested is great, but it affects so much more that most people don't take count for. And what happens is you become so used to it that you don't even realize that that could be a contributing factor.
Right. Do you find as well, I mean, I don't know about you, but I find these days people are almost in competition with how little sleep they can get with, well, I only get 4 hours sleep a night, I'm a high performing individual. I work really hard. I only get 4 hours sleep. And it's almost like, it's like they're wearing a medal, an invisible medal and I really wonder if that's an attitude that needs to change in many areas of the Western world, because if a high performing human is classed as someone, yes, that has all these successes and riches in life, but they have no investment in their health, then to me, that's not success.
I couldn't agree more. I feel that growing up and, going through all my schooling and whatnot, I've always seen people, doing the pulling all-nighters, no sleep.
Yeah.
Having friends that are in the business world, they're, running on 3 to 4 hours of sleep. What we see in the short term that may be sustainable, but we haven't followed them in the long term. In the long term, you see people crumbling with the lack of sleep. It's just not sustainable physically and mentally. You're just not performing at a high level. And really, self-care is so important to be successful in relationships, in your work, physically. We can only sustain the sleep deprivation for so long before it really takes a toll. Heart attack, stroke, collapsing from fatigue. We've seen it all. If you look at celebrities that end up in the hospital, what do they end up in the hospital for? Fatigue.
Right.
So fatigue can only hold you over for so long, and then it's unsustainable.
Right. And in terms of breathing here, in terms of functional and dysfunctional breathing, of course, if your breathing is off, and by dysfunctional breathing, of course, I'm talking about mouth breathing, that if you are a habitual mouth breather, then would you say it's true? It is impossible to get a quality night's sleep while you are continuing to breathe through your mouth. And that is the first thing to address when addressing your health.
Yes, I absolutely agree. Mouth breathing doesn't allow for the same effects as nasal breathing does on the body during the day or at night. If you mouth breathe, you're not getting the benefits of the nitric oxide that is produced when you nasal breathe. So your body isn't getting the same relaxation effects that nitric oxide provides when you breathe through your nose. The other thing is when you're breathing through your mouth, you're actually hyperventilating your body. You're telling your body, I'm bringing in a ton of oxygen because something is going on. I need to fight. It's like fight or flight response. So
I'm in danger.
Yes. So your body doesn't relax at the same rate. Therefore, you're not getting that refreshed sleep. You're not in a relaxed environment. And on top of that, when you're mouth breathing, you're telling your body to produce certain hormones at certain levels. And that also causes you to get less restorative sleep. whenever your body feels that it's in a stressed environment, your cortisol levels will increase and you'll start to wake up more and more at night.
Right.
So even though you feel, oh, I'm just mouth breathing, not a big deal, it really does take a toll long term. Again, in the short term, things, your body finds a way to compensate. But in the long term, you're not going to get that same relaxed, restorative, deep sleep that you would if you were to nasal breathe.
So you're never really resting then. If you're mouth breathing habitually and you're going to sleep that way with your mouth wide open, like so much of the population are, in theory, you're never resting.
In theory, yes. And what happens is you become used to that. So you don't even realize that you're not getting a good night's sleep because this is what you're used to. And you feel, oh, I'm rested. This is how I sleep. And I hear so many people when they learn to breathe with their nose through mouth taping, they are amazed at how well rested they feel.
Yeah.
And they never understood what sleep really was.
Yeah. Do you know what? Mouth taping changed my life. And I was just going to bring this up that when I found Patrick McEwen at the Oxygen Advantage and he started talking about mouth breathing, I delved deeper. I found James Nestor's book, Breath. He talks about mouth taping. And at first, of course, like everyone is, I was like, what? No, what is this? Some kinky thing? Surely not, you know? And then I tried it myself out of curiosity, just with some adhesive tape, like nothing special. And I swear I've never woken up with so much energy. I always woke up with a very dry mouth, to the point sometimes that I could not speak until midday. Like I sounded like a croaking frog, you know? And it would take me a long time to get going in the morning. I always felt very tired. And from the first night, this wasn't, a sort of, it took me a year. The first night, I felt instantaneous energy lifts. And I thought, do you know what? I don't know if I've ever had a good night's sleep as that before I tape my mouth. And it's so simple. It's so simple. And it's available to everybody. And I mean, of course, I was just going to ask you, what can we do about it? But we've just started talking about mouth taping. So it's such a great solution, right? And do your patients often find that when they start mouth taping, their snoring, sleep apnea starts to disappear?
So for mouth taping, a lot of times my patients who have upper airway resistance syndrome or who have very, very mild apnea will benefit. But if you have severe apnea or moderate to severe apnea, I always recommend to see if there are some patients who can mouth tape, but even just to start with the appliance and see how we do, because when we have patients who have obstructive sleep apnea, they oftentimes will grind their teeth. Ooh. And it becomes a little bit more difficult to mouth tape. So what I recommend in those cases are to wear your appliance. And if we can mouth tape, great. If not, we want to open up the nasal passages. So breathe right strips, nasal dilators, and even for my patients who don't have obstructive sleep apnea and just have difficulty breathing through their nose, I recommend to do all of that. And of course, if it's still not working, in ENT. Ear, nose, and throat doctor to help, fix the deviation, or if you have polyps or whatever the case may be. But mouth taping is phenomenal. And I always recommend to my patients to try mouth taping in the daytime. First, to make sure you can breathe through your nose, make sure, you don't have a blockage of any sort. And, if you do, then we go through a regimen of, nasal saline, breathe right strips, nasal dilators, until we figure out how we can establish a patent nasal airway. And then jump in at night. In the first couple of nights, they'll do it for maybe a couple of hours and it'll come off, which is fine. The body, if you're not used to doing something, it takes time to build a habit. And the body you might just naturally take it off in your sleep and you don't know. Right. And that's okay. 1 hour of nasal breathing is phenomenal. Build on it. Build on it. And that's what I always tell with patients. Patience is key. Just trying to do a little bit every night, you will feel the difference. Even 1 hour will make a difference. And it's been great. People just, the transformation is incredible. You see a night and day boost of energy, like you were saying. The mood lightens.
Yeah,
And
even my skin, even my
mhm.
skin has never been so great. I
Yeah,
used to suffer from spots, but it wasn't acne. It was just a few spots. And I'm not a doctor, hands up, I'm not a doctor, but I really put that down to the fact that my body was under stress and it was crying out for
yes,
help. Because when the body is under stress, it's gonna show that adversely in some way, right? Whether that's
absolutely.
spots, whether that's the bags under your eyes or some
Mhm.
eczema or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And the bags under your eyes is another indicator that we look for. We look for it in children and we look for it in adults. It just
Mm,
means you're not getting the oxygen you need.
really?
You're
That's
not
what
getting the
causes
sleep you
that?
need.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah,
depletion of
it's
oxygen.
actually
Crazy.
yes.
Wow. That's mental. Gosh. Listen, I really, really want to get into your productivity routines. I know you're a big advocate for those on social media because of course it's not just when you're sleeping, right? The way, like we said before, it's one big vicious circle. The way you go about your day really has an effect on your sleep. And there's many different things that I've been learning about recently that I know sort of can have an effect on it. Like I've just bought some blue blocking glasses. I love them. I've noticed they help my sleep by blocking out that blue light. So I'd love to know your sort of ideas on what you advise people in terms of their routines to help deepen that sleep quality.
Absolutely. So we can start with the morning. Let's start
Okay.
there.
Yeah.
I always recommend that when you wake up in the morning, to get some sunlight, whether it's taking a morning run or walk, or just going outside to have a coffee. And
Mm,
if it's in the wintertime and you're not getting that same sun, just keeping no sunglasses on when you're driving to work. If it's a little bit later
mm,
in the morning when the sun does come out,
yeah.
that's always key to reset the sleep cycle. The sleep cycle is key in having you be more awake in the morning and sleepier as the day goes on.
Right. So this
The
the
other
sleep
thing I always
cycle
recommend,
is not just when you're asleep.
mhm,
The sleep cycle is not just when you're asleep. It counts for the whole time.
the whole day, yes. So if
Right.
you disrupt your sleep cycle, which is your wake time and your sleep time, your
Oh,
sleep will not be as timely. And those are the times where you see people laying in bed and they just can't fall asleep, or
yeah.
people who are waking up in the middle of the night for long periods of time.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And the other thing that really takes effect is diet.
Oh, okay.
So you want to make sure that throughout the day you're having a fairly well balanced meal
Yeah.
for each breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Because what happens is as our sugar levels rise and drop, we tend to have our body react in different ways. So,
Yeah.
for example, if our sugar levels drop, our body thinks, okay, we need to increase them by producing more insulin or having us wake up to eat in a sense.
Right.
So before bed, you want to make sure that you have um, a good meal, but not too heavy and not too close to bedtime. So nothing about 3 to 4 hours before bed. Um,
Right.
Meal wise. And then if you feel that you're getting a little bit hungrier towards bedtime, you can have a small snack like a banana or a whole grain toast with some peanut
Right.
butter on it.
Right.
And that's what we want to do, is really stabilize your blood sugar levels so that they don't drop in the middle of the night where your body wakes you up to eat.
Right.
So when we see a lot of people waking up at 2, 3, 4 in the morning, their body is telling them, hey, something's going on. I need you to wake up and feed me or figure out what's bothering me.
Right. Right. What about
Okay.
alcohol then, in terms of if someone's having like a glass of wine with their dinner and they've made that quite a habit, could that have an effect on your sleep as well?
Absolutely. So one glass of alcohol, if you have dinner around 6 or 7, is not a big deal. But if
Right.
you're having drinks, throughout the night and ending, 30 minutes before you go to sleep, it's possible that the alcohol will make your sleep less restorative. So alcohol will
Right.
make you fall asleep better, but it actually doesn't allow you to stay asleep in
Oh.
an adequate capacity.
Mm.
So you tend to not have a deep sleep when you are drinking a lot of alcohol.
Right.
You sometimes wake up because alcohol can actually make you dream more, and it can
Oh,
produce nightmares for a lot of people. So we might wake up more and have restless sleep.
right.
So in that sense, I always recommend that, once in a while you're going out, that's, it's okay. But if you're one that likes to drink wine every night, I would always recommend to have it with dinner and not closer to bedtime, because
Right.
you want to have your body be able to, metabolize the alcohol before we get to sleep.
Yeah, right, definitely. And so every moment that you go about your day actually affects the way you sleep. And so it's one out the other as such. So what about things like exercise and other things? And I'm even interested for women in terms of hormones. Like, is there certain parts in the menstrual cycle when women need more sleep, maybe?
Sure. So exercise is extremely important. One, to make you more tired throughout the day
Mm,
so that you have a greater sleep drive, meaning your
mm,
body wants to sleep. And then two, our sleep is also highly affected by our body temperature. So
right,
when we wake up in the morning, we have a higher body temperature, and generally by throughout the day, our body temperature starts to decrease. And at night, we have a lower body temperature.
right.
Throughout the night, our body temperature decreases, goes, and then peaks in the morning. So when we exercise, we want to do so as early as possible,
Oh,
because if you exercise 30 minutes before you go to bed and you're doing, a sprint run or a HIIT workout, you're really increasing your heart rate and your body temperature.
right.
So your body temperature, even though the fluctuation is just half a degree or 1 degree, it's still enough to affect your sleep.
Wow.
So if
Right.
you're doing, if your only option to exercise is 1 hour before you sleep, you can try yoga or a stretch routine that's a little less intensive than,
Mm,
doing a HIIT workout, because that's raising, one, your energy levels, and
yeah.
two, your heart rate and your blood body temperature, to the
Mm,
point where it'll make it harder to fall asleep.
yeah. Yeah.
So if you do it in the morning, it allows you the whole day to lower your body temperature.
Right, right. So waking up, like you said, getting some sun, and at the same time, why not get some exercise
Absolutely.
is a great thing. Right. Okay. So what about then at nighttime?
So exercising at night.
No, what about just at nighttime in general? We've talked about eating at nighttime and everything else, but in terms of the specifics, in terms of what should be in your room, in terms of your phone, in terms of
Sure.
technology, in terms of lights, there's so much thrown around, like put your phone in a different room or, only have candlelight. An hour before you go to bed. There's so many different things when you are looking into your health. I think it can be quite overwhelming sometimes that you're like, what do I do?
Sure. It's been said that electronics, phone, TV, computers, um, will prevent you from sleeping.
Right.
Um, I agree to a certain extent. Of course, we have people who, the minute you look at social media, you become engaged in, I feel that it's not just having the phone by your bedside that's waking you up. I think it's the emotion that's connected to the phone.
That's an
So
amazing
often,
point. Mm,
so oftentimes we will say, okay, it's the light coming from the phone that's disrupting our sleep. But I
right.
think it has a portion that it plays in it, and that's why blue blocking glasses are really great. But I
Yeah.
think the minute we look at our phone, we are checking emails that are connected to work stress,
Mm,
checking social media that are connected to social stressors, comparisons. Her life is better than my life, or
right.
how come I can't have that, or oh
Mm,
wow, that looks so nice. Where it becomes more of an anxiety inducer, and that's what contributes to restless sleep.
yeah.
For a lot of my patients who have trouble falling asleep, it's because of anxiety and stress. Majority of it is
Mm,
from that.
right.
Secondary, of course, we have diet, sleep disorders, things like that. But a lot of it has to do with anxiety and stress. And so, what I recommend, of course, to most of my clients is make the room dark as much as you can. if you can put any of your electronics outside and not use them in your bed, that's fantastic.
Right.
For some people, watching a little bit of TV helps them fall asleep and it's kind of calming for them. That's fine. Try to limit it to 30 minutes and not, 3 hours in your bed. We do want to try to make your bedroom a sanctuary, but your bed, we want to emphasize just for sleep.
Right.
We don't want to be working on stressful projects or having, arguments while we're, sitting on our bed, because that reframes our bed as a more anxiety inducing place rather than a relaxing, sleep inducing place.
That's such a lot of perspective. Wow. Yeah. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah. A lot of our anxiety and stressors, they produce restless sleep or no sleep in most cases for people. So I always recommend that before bedtime, if you can establish a routine, a nighttime routine, a bedtime routine that's going to help you relax. So journaling, gratitude, goals, stuff that was stressing you out during the day, just get it out, do a brain dump, meditation or yoga. And for a lot of people, meditation is hard, yoga is hard. And that's where I come in with my breathing techniques.
Yeah.
Box breathing, 4-7-8, alternate nostril breathing.
A lot of pranayama yes. Inspired. Really nice. Yeah.
And that just helps them calm and reframe. And even for my patients that wake up in the middle of the night with all of a sudden they're thinking, oh, I didn't do this, or I have to do that, or this is stressing me out, or that's making me anxious. I tell them, lay down, reframe, deep breaths in, deep breaths out. And we go through one of the techniques that they've, kind of mastered and they feel comfortable with. And it changes their whole mood. It almost brings them back, centers them, and allows them to relax. So for me, most of my nighttime routine is really framing around reducing stress and anxiety.
Yeah.
I think anything that will produce an anxious response or stressor for you to eliminate. If looking through social media is going to give you anxiety, or checking your emails, don't do it. And in that sense, put your phone outside the room, your computer outside the room.
Yeah. Get an alarm clock.
Exactly. Try to eliminate anything that's going to cause you stress. And, of course, if you have to work late, try to do it on the sofa or on a desk or on a table, and wear blue blocking glasses, because that's going to just help your circadian rhythm and allow melatonin to be produced, because the light will block melatonin, which is our sleep hormone. Yeah. So in those senses, yes, those are fantastic. But for me, when it comes to having certain routines like yoga or taking a nice hot bath, it's more just for relaxation.
Yeah.
When it comes to,
do you know what else I think it's for though, is that recently actually I've started doing a morning ritual where my phone stays on airplane mode for about an hour when I wake up, and I give myself time before I give the rest of the world my time, because there's so much out there these days that requires a lot of our energy that is in a phone. It's, I suppose before phones were around, you had to go somewhere to give someone that energy, and otherwise you had no choice but to be with yourself. But now the outside world is in our bedrooms via a phone or a laptop or the news or whatever. And it's really revolutionized my mornings to give myself 1 hour to. This morning I went for a jog, came back, did some breathing, did some journaling. And by doing some breathing exercises, I felt like doing some journaling, because I was giving that time to myself. And I think that is something that is of extreme value, especially in terms of if someone is extremely busy, if someone is a mother and they have a very busy family life, to take, even if it's not an hour, to take 20 minutes to themselves, that's life-changing, right?
Oh, I absolutely agree. I'm a huge fan of morning routines. It not only gives you that time for yourself, but it sets up your day for more productivity and less stressors. And the less stressed out we are during the day and the more productive we are, the more likely, one, we'll go to sleep at a more harmonious state. And two, we'll be able to get to sleep on time. Having a bedtime per se. It's not just for children, it's for adults too. Having a consistent bedtime and a consistent wake time will give you better sleep and get your body accustomed to falling asleep faster. And that's really important, because self-care, we encompass physical self-care, emotional, spiritual, but we very rarely think about sleep as self-care. We think about it as just something we have to do, but sleep can really affect how you even wake up and become, that person you always dreamed you could be, that goal of a person. And I think the morning routine really starts your day off so that you can end your day at the best possible way.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Robin Sharma's 5 a.m. club. I mean, I have not managed yet to join the 5 a.m. club on a daily basis. I do it sort of on and off. It's definitely a goal of mine to get up that early. But I really love his intention in that getting up, doing small sections, incrementing little sections into your day of a little formula of, like you said, working out, self-reflecting, giving gratitude, setting an intention for your day, because then you're going forward sort of knowing that you're on the right track, right? Rather than just sort of waking up and kind of winging it every morning.
Absolutely. I feel that setting your day with intention, it allows you to be more in sync with yourself. And that, I think, it leads to better results when it comes to everything, your sleep, your relationships, achieving your goals. So for me, when I look at sleep, I wanted to dive into something deeper with my clients. So I took sleep and I really said, okay, what causes most of the, rough patches when it comes to sleep? What causes most of the distress? And I looked, and a lot of it has to do with, being inefficient during the daytime, not giving yourself quality time, not having a system in place, and, having that blur of work and life and kids and other priorities, being a caretaker for somebody. So I really have started to branch out and trying to help establish routines for my clients, and so that they can really compartmentalize their day and have time for that restorative sleep. Get into bed and relax for a half an hour before, and be able to say, okay, you know what, 10 o'clock is my bedtime, or 11 o'clock is my bedtime. And that's that, and nothing will change it, because getting sleep is important for me, is important for my family, for my work, for, for reaching my goals. I just don't want people to see sleep as an afterthought. It should really be an intentional part of your day, because of how important it is.
Right. So would you go as far to say revolutionize your sleep, revolutionize your health?
Absolutely. I always tell my patients, if you can transform your sleep, you will transform your life.
Yeah.
It is that important.
Yeah. And that is not a statement said lightly either. I mean, as we've been speaking about, it trickles into every other part of life, your sleep. And it's a gift that so many more people, I think, should give to themselves. And it's a value of yourself and your own health, right?
Absolutely. I don't think we should ever look at sleeping as a lazy person's, trait. Sleeping is a productive and very health-driven act. Mental stability, physical performance, everything is based in getting good sleep. So it's definitely not something that should be taken lightly, or thinking that rest is selfish or unproductive, because taking rest will actually boost your productivity, will boost your, mood, will boost your relationship. So I think that that's what I've been working on a lot, just trying to change the mindset when it comes to sleep, and looking at it as a way to, enhance yourself, not take away from your days.
Yeah, 100%. So I'm curious, and just to finish off, I mean, I've learned so much through this conversation, but I'm definitely curious that if someone listening is suffering from insomnia or obstructive sleep apnea, or just disruptive sleep in some way, where would you advise them to start on their journey to restoring their sleep and restoring their health as well?
I would say anybody that is suffering from signs and symptoms of obstructive sleep apnea, if they believe they do so, of course, contact your physician, or if you go regularly to see your dentist, more so bring it up to your dentist and they can advise you where to go from there.
Right.
For people who are suffering with insomnia or restless sleep, I would first, identify what may be causing your restless sleep. Identify any stressors throughout your day, and then go from there. You had mentioned this before, that hormones can play a big role in restless sleep as well.
Right.
I always like to identify external factors first, because relieving our stress and anxiety will help us regardless, whether it's throughout our day or even with our sleep. So I like to start with the small stuff first.
Right.
And then if we're not having any results, then go into hormone testing and, gut health, things like that.
Right.
So of course, reaching out to any, psychotherapists or sleep specialists, sleep coaches, sleep consultants, will help you identify really what's going on and pinpoint where we need to work to get you that help for your sleep.
Yeah, it sounds like it's just all about awareness at first.
Absolutely. Yes, I think just understanding what symptoms you're having can really lead you in the right direction. Because I always like to identify if a person is having a sleep-related breathing disorder before going into anything.
Right.
If you are, then that needs to be treated. And when you do treat it, it doesn't mean you'll get 100% the best sleep of your life, because you already have learned habits of restless sleep. So we still need to coach you in getting better sleep, because anxiety and stress can still be there. Gut issues can still be there. Hormone imbalances could still be there, especially if you're perimenopausal or menopausal, or, low testosterone. So there can be a lot of issues in general when it comes to sleeping that a CPAP or an oral appliance may not completely resolve. So for me, it's always the first step is figuring out if you have a breathing disorder, and then go from there. Because sleep as a whole still needs to be corrected.
Right. So making sure as well that your nasal breathing must be a huge part of that, right?
Yes, absolutely. So that kind of I wrap into my, sleep disordered breathing. Are you breathing with your mouth or your nose? Are you snoring? Are you stopping breathing? All of that I kind of assess in the beginning, and then we jump in from there. We jump into getting, the appropriate appliances, or heading down, the rabbit hole of trying to treat your disordered sleep, your restless sleep with, behavior changes, sleep hygiene, diet changes. It's really tailored to the individual in just seeing how they respond to different things and going from there.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Natasha. Where can we find you if the listeners want more information?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm pretty active on Instagram, and that's probably where you'll be able to catch up with me the most, at Dr Natasha War. And you can message me, leave comments, and I'm really responsive. So any questions you guys have, just let me know.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, sleep, I think, deserves so much more attention, especially in this Western world, especially in times when we're in a global pandemic and there is so much fear, so much sickness in the air. I think our sleep is something that if during, this lockdown, that we can just decide to bring some awareness to our sleep, I think a whole lot of us would be way better off for it.
I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing. Natasha, thank you so much. It's so good to chat to you. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. This was amazing.
Thank you.